Jenny. I'm going to do a commemorative speech on my Abeula. So, this is my audience member, Erin. This is my audience member, Jessica, and Paige, and Victoria, and Hannah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, growing up, my mom's mom, my Abeula, and I were very close. I have a vivid memory of when I was about 8 years old and her teaching me how to make her famous chicken noodle soup. She taught me how to chop the carrots, and when she didn't trust me to do the rest because she didn't want me to get cut using a sharp knife. She was a wonderful woman who was a genius in the kitchen and had so much kindness in her heart and would do anything for her family. I remember many times my Abeula would make sure that we were all taken care of before she would even think about sitting down to eat dinner. She had so much energy and never was tired of playing with us when my sisters and I were little. She was all you could ever ask for in a grandmother and more. My Abeula was born Rita Louisa Alfonso on May 17, 1931 in Marseille, France, to the parents of Teresa Royal Foyo and Guillermo Alfonso. She was the sixth child of 9 total, 8 girls and 1 boy. Of those 9, her only brother and her sister Rosa are still alive. Due to her father being an exporter, her family lived and traveled all over Europe in her early life. She lived in France until she was about 4 years old, and in fact, French was her first language. She moved to the Canary Islands when she was 4 in Spain, and she was raised there for the rest of her life. My Abeula's upbringing was far from easy. Her father was an alcoholic and was not very successful. She also grew up during the Spanish Civil War, which caused a lot of difficulty in the country. Her family was very poor, and sometimes she and her sisters would have to go live and work elsewhere since there was not enough food to eat and her mother could not provide for all 9 children. Eventually, my Abeula lost her father due to alcoholism, and shortly after, she lost her older sister at 21 due to tuberculosis, and then her baby sister Maria at about 6 months old of a heart condition. As a result of these 3 tragic losses and the difficulty of her life, my great-grandmother was a very unhappy woman for the rest of her life. But my Abeula did not let all of that hardship upbringing make her bitter or regretful. She continued to see the positives in her life and always had a joyful disposition. One of the most important values in my family is education. Growing up, getting good grades was not an option. It was expected of us, and college wasn't something that we could consider. It was something that was simply done. This value is something that stems all the way back to Rita, my Abeula. Growing up, she did not have much of an education. In fact, she only went to school until the 6th grade due to her family's poor financial situation. Because of this, she instilled importance of education in her children, in turn, her grandchildren, for the rest of her life. She would always tell us how smart we were and would love hearing about how we were doing in school. I know she would be very proud to know that all of her children and grandchildren graduated or are about to graduate from college. Before my Abeula married my Abuelo, she was actually engaged to another man. He had brought a motorcycle to use for their honeymoon on her and drive around the Spanish countryside. But he was tragically killed before they could ever do that, and as a result of this, she hated motorcycles for the rest of her life. A couple years later, my Abuela went on a blind date with my grandfather, my Abuelo. They were introduced by a man who lived in New York, who ended up being my mother's godfather. His name was Bob Miller. My Abuela was living in Cuba at the time, and Bob Miller told my Abuela to go visit this family in Cuba. This family happened to be my Abuela's. The night they met, they went to this famous nightclub called the Tropicana nightclub, and they danced for hours. My Abuela kept the plate from the nightclub in the house for years later to remember their first date. After the date, my Abuelo had to go back to New York, and my Abuela and him became pen pals. After a while, he asked her to come to New York, but since she came up from a strict Catholic family, they decided to get legally married through the mail. So after that, she hopped on a plane to meet her newlywed husband in New York. My great-grandmother believed marriage should occur in the church and not through the mail, so they got some friends together in New York and they went on a church to where they were married again. My Abuela always jokes to this day that after they got married in the church for the second time, he took his bride home in the biggest limousine in the world, the New York subway. Although it is tragic what happened to my Abuela's first engagement, it goes to show that every cloud has a silver lining, and it amazes me that she never gave up hope on a second chance's love. My abuela was a very traditional homemaker and was a firm believer in you are what you eat. She believed that everyone needed to eat a home-cooked meal, and she never cooked anything canned or processed, and was constantly finding fresh ingredients for new recipes. My mother always said that her food was always delicious and her house was always spotless, but that didn't stop her from being the life of the party. She absolutely loved to sing and dance. Growing up, my mother said that the record playing was always playing Spanish music, and while she was cooking in the kitchen. Every weekend, the adults used to come over and move furniture in the living room and dance with each other until the kids fell asleep. My abuela believed that if you didn't dance, you were boring, so you got up and danced until you couldn't anymore. The thing I admire the most about my abuela is that after she made it to America, she created a wonderful life for her family, but she never forgot where she came from in all of her hard childhood life. She always gave to the poor, would take in stray animals, and to care for them, and she never let her kids or grandkids go hungry, and she often overfed us. She was constantly putting others' needs before her own. One of her favorite sayings was, "La vida es un sueño que todo se va," which translates to, life is like a dream, it all goes away. And even though hers passed on November 2nd, 2012, her memory lives on as a selfless, caring, kind-hearted, loving abuela who overcame a lifetime of hardship and who is missed very dearly.